Hi, welcome back to yet another session of biology classes with Lakshmi Chandra. In this session, I am going to introduce certain biomolecules, that is the molecules of life. See, actually this particular topic, biomolecules, is actually present in the +1 portion, class 11 portion. But then why I have taken this in this particular juncture into +2 portions also as well is because you know that we are now dealing with a particular type of molecule called as the nucleic acid or the DNA, wherein I have told you regarding the pentose sugar and the different bases. So when I had explained all those pentose sugar and bases, actually so many questions came to me regarding the basics of these pentose sugar, these biomolecules and all. So I thought of, instead of explaining only those doubts, I thought of taking the whole biomolecules as a session. So as first step towards that, I'll begin with the saccharides, the sugar molecules, or the polysaccharides, or in simple terms are carbohydrates. So in this session is totally devoted towards understanding the molecular nature of carbohydrates and their structure. So let's see. Biomolecules are the molecules of life. So these biomolecules or the molecules of life can be broadly divided into two categories depending upon their molecular size. Some of the biomolecules are very large in size. You call them by the name macromolecules. Macromolecules. So biomolecules which are very large in their size, you call them as macromolecules. There are also a class of molecules, a group of molecules whose molecular size is very less than 80 Dalton it is actually. So you call that class of molecules, you put it under one category and you call them as the micromolecules. So macromolecules and micromolecules, that is biomolecules are classified into two depending upon the nature of their molecular size, as macro or very big molecules and micro or very small molecules. Let's take some examples for that. One major example, as you all know, is the carbohydrate molecule. So since we are going into this biology classes deeply, we will use another word for carbohydrate. It is called as a polysaccharide. Poly means many, saccharide means sugar unit. Polysaccharide. Many sugar units linked together will give you a big molecule. You call that big molecule or that big macromolecule as a polysaccharide. So what is its micromolecule? What it is made up of? It is made up of small sugar units, isn't it? So you call those small sugar units by the name monosaccharides. Monosaccharides. Mono means single sugar units linked together will give you many sugar units linked together, that is called as a polysaccharide. So monosaccharide, polysaccharide. Here we can say this monosaccharide is the building block of this particular polysaccharide. Okay. Now let's move on to the next macromolecule. It is called as the polypeptide. Polypeptide. Polypeptide is actually a protein molecules. So like I told you, for carbohydrates we call them as polysaccharides. For proteins we call them as polypeptides. Why so? It will be more clear when I take this portion polypeptide in deep. Okay. So polypeptide. So what it is made up of? What is the monomer? It is made up of single units called as amino acids. Amino acids. So polypeptides are made up of amino acids, or amino acids are the building blocks of polypeptides or proteins. So here polypeptide is a big molecule, it becomes a macromolecule, and the small building blocks you put it under the micro molecule, amino acids. Next macromolecule is actually lipids. Lipids. They are made up of two micromolecules, two building blocks are there. They are called as fatty acids plus glycerol molecule. Glycerol, acid and alcohol molecule. Fatty acid and glycerol, ROL, that is an alcohol. So together it gives you a big macromolecule called as the lipid. Now the fourth one is the nucleic acid. Actually, this is the molecule which we had dealt with in the previous sessions. Nucleic acid, the structure of nucleic acid. Okay, so we can say the nucleic acid is made up of nucleotides. Nucleotides. And what is this nucleotide actually made up of? This nucleotide, if you just divide them into simple components, this nucleotide is in turn made up of a pentose sugar, that means sugar that is something related to the saccharides. Okay, the nucleotide is made up of a pentose sugar, then it is made up of a nitrogenous, base, and also it is also having a phosphate component. So regarding this particular macromolecule is dealt in detail. Okay, is dealt in detail. So here nitrogenous base and phosphate. I'll write it more clearly here for you if it is not visible. Nitrogenous base plus phosphate. Okay. So if you say what is nucleic acid made up of, they are made up of nucleotides. What is nucleotides made up of? These three components. So actually how they are bounded, the name of the bonding, okay, and how the whole structure of DNA is formed, how it differs from the other nucleic acid, that is RNA, all these were dealt with in the previous sessions. So nucleic acids, it is of two types, that is deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. So detail regarding this macromolecule, everything regarding nucleic acids is already dealt with in the previous session. So when I took that particular session, students asked me regarding these doubts. Miss, what is this pentose sugar? Okay, and what is nitrogenous base? What is their structure actually? So many questions came. So I thought if I had to tell you what is this pentose sugar, you should know what a sugar molecule is, what is monosaccharide, what is polysaccharide. So I thought of even making you understand what is polypeptide and what about the structure of lipids. So in this session, let's first understand about the structure of polysaccharides and monosaccharides. Polysaccharides and monosaccharides. So first we'll understand this building block, monosaccharide, and then we'll learn how they are linked to form the polysaccharide. So the building block, monosaccharide. Monosaccharide means simple sugar, single sugar. Okay. This monosaccharide is also classified into different forms based on the number of carbon atoms present. So we are going to deal with the classification of monosaccharides. Simple sugars, they are classified based on the number of carbon atoms present in them. So if you take the simplest monosaccharide is a sugar molecule having 3 carbon atoms. 3 carbon atoms. So sugar molecule having 3 carbon atoms, it is called by the name Triose. sugar molecule having 3 carbon atoms. It is called by the name triose. So almost all sugar molecules having 3 carbon atoms, you put it under this category, triose. Next, if a sugar molecule is having 4 carbon atoms, it is put under the classification as tetrose. It is called as a tetrose. Tetrose means sugar molecule having 4 carbon atoms. So now itself I think you have come across this O's ending means most of the molecules are saccharide molecules or sugar molecules. Okay. Now next one, sugar molecule having 5 carbon atom, they are called as pentose. So now I think you understood the meaning of the pentose sugar present in the nucleic acid. Okay, the pentose sugar means the sugar is having 5 carbon atoms, and there we learned the example as the pentose sugar example is ribose. Ribose is example of a pentose sugar having 5 carbon atoms. Okay. Then next one, sugar having 6 carbon atoms. What will you call them as? It is triose for 3, tetrose for 4, pentose for 5. And what will be for 6? Yes, it is hexose. You call them as hexose. And example is our normal glucose. We all know about this. Glucose. Glucose is a sugar molecule and it is example of a sugar molecule having 6 carbon atoms. It is example of a hexose. Okay. Now let's learn how to draw the structure of this particular glucose. Small structures we will learn. We have to learn, as far as your plus 1 plus 2 is concerned, you have to learn the structure of glucose and ribose. Okay, glucose and ribose. So first let's understand the structure of glucose. So to understand that, keep it in mind, glucose is having 6 carbon atoms in it. 6 carbon atoms in it. Okay. Now I'll tell you the structure of glucose. I'll draw and I'll show to you. But before going to that, we are dealing with classification of sugar molecules, isn't it? And I told you they are classified based on the number of carbon atoms present as triose, tetrose, pentose and hexose. Now, these particular sugar molecules can also be classified based on the type of functional group present. You have learnt in your lower classes in class 10 and all about functional group. That is, when the group is added, it actually changes the whole property of that particular molecule, isn't it? Same way, when depending upon the nature of the functional group present, there are different types of monosaccharides. So the functional groups are of 2 types. Either it can be an aldehyde or it can be a ketone. Functional group present in this sugar molecules can be either a aldehyde group or a ketone group. Okay, it's very simple. If an aldehyde is present, you call the sugar as a aldose. I told you it's ending with O's. If a ketone is present, you call that sugar molecule as a ketose. Simple. Aldose and ketose. So now, if a sugar is having 3 carbon and also it is having aldose, what will you call it as? Aldotriose. So it is having aldose and it is 3 carbon. So you call it as aldotriose. So from the word itself you can understand triose, it is ending with O's. So it is a sugar molecule having 3 carbon and it is having the functional group aldehyde. Similarly, if it is a 3 carbon sugar with ketone as a functional group, you will call it as ketotriose. Ketotriose. Similarly, with 4 carbon, you call it as aldotetrose. And if it is ketone, you will call it as ketotetrose. Ketotetrose. Pentose sugar, 5 carbon aldehyde, the functional group. So it is aldopentose. And if it's ketone is the functional group, then it will be ketopentose. Isn't it very simple to learn? Very simple. Just write the functional group followed by the number of carbon atoms. Hexose also, Aldohexose, and ketone, so it is Ketohexose. So as simple as that, very simple it is to learn. Okay. Now from here, I'll just write the name of the sugars which is actually needed by you. In your higher studies also, it is actually needed by you as far as our +1, +2 is concerned. So let us focus on aldohexose and ketohexose. As I told you before, glucose is example of a hexose. So it is actually a aldohexose. So glucose is having 6 carbon atoms, and in that it is also having a functional group, that is aldehyde. And fructose. Fructose is example of a ketohexose. Fructose is example of a ketohexose. It is also having 6 carbon like our glucose. But what is the difference between glucose and fructose? Fructose, the functional group is ketone, and glucose, the functional group is aldehyde. And what is the similarity? Both of them are having 6 carbon atoms. Now keeping this idea in mind, aldohexose, let us draw the structure of glucose. Let us draw the structure of glucose. So classification based on the number of carbon atoms present and the functional group present, I have told you. Now we are concentrating our attention on the structure of glucose. Because once you understand the structure of glucose, you will also understand the different how these glucose molecules are linked together to form a polysaccharide. Okay, so now let's understand the structure of glucose. Structure of glucose. Structure of glucose. So here it is 6 carbons are present, right? So first draw all the 6 carbon one below the other. First one, second, third, fourth, fifth, 6 carbons I have drawn. Now I should make it as a aldohexose. It is now hexose. I should make it as aldohexose. You know the valency of carbon is 4, isn't it? That's already known. The valency of carbon is 4. So here already this carbon is having 1 bond here. So I'm putting here 2, 3, 4. Okay. Again this carbon is having 2 bonds. 1 here, 1 here. 2 already bonded. So 3, 4. This is also 3, 4. 3, 4. 3, 4. It is bonded to first one, second, third, fourth. So here I have just drawn all the 4 bonds around it. So this is how you should learn to draw the structure of glucose. This hexose, so I have drawn all the 6 carbon atoms. Now I have just put the 4 bonds around each carbon atom. The bond which is coming here will be common for the carbon above it and below it. Similarly, this bond is common for the carbon above it and below it. So rest of the 2 bonds only I have to add with that. Only with respect to the first carbon and last carbon I have to put all the 3 bonds. Okay. Now you know the formula for glucose, C6H12O6. This is the formula for glucose. You all know this, isn't it? So I have put all the 6 carbon atoms. C6 I have put. Now I should show you how to put this O6 and H12. How to put, where to put and all. This is what I have to show you. Okay. So here, first let us make this as an aldohexose. I have to add aldehyde group. You know aldehyde group, C double bond O single bond H. This is aldehyde group. Single bond. Isn't it? So carbon 4 valencies. This is first carbon. 1, 2, 3, 4 valencies satisfied. So I have to show this. Isn't it? I have to show this 4 valencies here also. Isn't it? So 1 valency here. 2, 3, 4. 4 valencies. But I should draw the C double bond O single bond H. Isn't it? So I am bringing this bond here and making this double bond. Making this double bond. Okay. So this bond is removed and I am making this double bond. So C double bond O single bond H. So I have put here what group? Aldehyde group is fixed. Now again, if you look around this carbon atoms, how many bonds are there? 1, 2, 3, 4 bonds are there, satisfied. Right? So this bond, this extra bond here that I have shown is actually coming down here like this. Okay, so what I made here, by changing this bond, actually I had added the aldehyde group. I had made this a Aldohexose now. So now what I have to do is I have to add the rest of the hydrogen and the oxygen. Remember, when you draw the structure of glucose, carbon number 3, that is, this is 1, 2, 3. In the third carbon alone, the orientation of hydroxyl group should be like this. OH on the left side and H on the right side. In rest of the carbon atoms, the orientation of H and OH is in the other form. That is, hydrogen will come here and OH will come here. Here also H, OH. Here also H, OH, H, OH. Here again another H. Okay. So this area you have to be careful. And also one more thing. Whenever this bond is drawn, it should be bonded to oxygen. If oxygen is there along with hydrogen. You should never write like this. See, if you write like this, C, single bond HO, this is not correct. Why? Because see, hydrogen, you know, valency is 1. If you draw like this, hydrogen is showing 2 valencies. This is not correct. So always, how should I put here? C, single bond, O should come first, followed by H. Okay, so see, if it is coming like this, O should come. So O should be there in the bonding. Here also O is there in the bonding. And you should show the bond correctly to O. Never draw structures like this. Here is the bond and somewhere else is OH. Don't draw like this. Always it should align properly. Okay, so when in your chemistry classes, I think you will learn better of this bonding and all. But since I am teaching the structure of glucose, I think I should explain to you all these things. So I hope it is clear. This is straight chain formula for glucose. Straight chain formula. I have put this as a straight chain. Okay. So here if I simply modify and write, I can put like this. C double bond O single bond H. If I write like this or write like this, it is the same. This is just to show you that this is the functional group. I have made like this the arrangement. Next is C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So what should I be careful? The third carbon alone, I should put the orientation as OH-H. Rest of the carbons, it is HOH. 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 Okay. And see here, this carbon is bonded to 2 hydrogen and 1 OH. So, either I can write like this or I can simply put here CH2OH. I can put like this CH2OH. Okay. So, if shown, see, this is the first carbon, second, third, fourth, this is the third one, fourth one, fifth one, and this is the sixth one. This is the fourth carbon. I missed while I was writing. Okay. So 6 carbons are arranged like this, and in some textbooks you will see the structure like this, wherein this one tells that this is an aldo sugar and 6 carbons, so it says that it is a hexose, so aldohexose. So this is a structure of glucose. If you count the number of oxygen should be how many? 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 oxygen, right? So C6O6. Hydrogen should be 12 in number. Let us count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So 12 hydrogen atoms. So formula C6H12O6 is brought into this structural formula. This is a straight chain structure of glucose. Straight chain structure of glucose. Okay. You can either write like this or like this. Both are correct. Straight chain structure of glucose. Now, how to make it in a ring form? I'll tell you in a nutshell for you to understand. I'm not going to the deep chemistry part of that. Okay, for you to understand, I'll just tell you how it is made into the ring shape. See, to make it into a ring shape, the bond is between this particular functional group and the 5th carbon. Okay, functional group and the 5th carbon, the bonding is made. In this bonding, you know what happens? CH2O, that is H2O is removed. Water molecule is getting removed. How is that getting removed? This is one H, this is another H, and this is O. So H2O is getting removed. So carbon is now bonded to this oxygen, isn't it? This oxygen will occupy the central position here, with one bond connected to this carbon and the other bond connected to this carbon. Okay, so ultimately the structure, how it will become? This H is gone, this OH is gone. How it is gone? Because H2O, water molecule, is getting removed. Water molecule is getting removed, and what is left with the carbon? Oxygen is left with the carbon, and it is having 2 bonds, right? One bond will be there connected to this oxygen is now coming here with its one bond connected to the carbon here and the other bond connected to this carbon here. Now you see this is there inside a ring. Carbon number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. All the 5 carbons are there inside a rings-like structure. But what about the 6th carbon? 6th carbon is placed outside the ring. This is a ring structure. Okay. Now let me write this ring structure in a better way. As you can see in the textbooks and all. The ring structure is written in a better way. Let me show you that also. See. First I'll draw this oxygen. Okay. Oxygen. And I should draw 5 other corners. So 1, to keep all these other 5 carbons. To keep the other 5 carbons, I should draw the 5 corners. But 6th carbon is outside the ring. Okay. So oxygen already I have placed here. Now first one, second, third, fourth, 5th corner I have drawn. So in all these corners, what is present? In all these corners, all the 5 carbons are present. So they are present in all the 5 corners, and the 6th carbon, this carbon is placed outside the ring. So that is what I have shown here. 6th carbon is like this, placed outside the ring. CH2OH is placed there. Okay. Now what should I do? I have to put that H and OH, hydrogen and hydroxyl group I have to add, isn't it? So in order to add that, I am just drawing lines like this. This is showing the bonding, okay. In the corners, I am showing like this. So I have shown it like this in the corners. Okay. Now what should I do? Put H and OH. But I should be careful, isn't it? I should be careful. I can simply put H here and OH here. So when I draw O, I should show this O into this bond and H here like this, OH. Again second carbon also H, OH. But third carbon, I told you the orientation is opposite. How is that? It is OH, H. So this is how I can show. Again fourth carbon H, OH. So O towards O, I should show that bond. If it is simply H, I can just show it on the H. Otherwise, I should put it towards O. Okay. Then now see the sixth carbon. It is bonded to CH2OH and it is bonded to this one. This fifth carbon is also bonded to one hydrogen here. So that also I can show here. It is bonded to hydrogen. CH2OH. So this is the ring structure of glucose. So what I have drawn here is the ring structure of glucose. This is the structure which is commonly used to show the different bondings with different monosaccharides. One glucose is linked to another glucose. How that linkage happens, to show that we mainly make use of this ring structure. Now why I explained to you the straight chain formula is, only from here you will understand how this ring structure is getting actually formed. If I simply draw this, you will be by hearting. It's not like that. When you are asked to draw the structure of glucose, the first point that should come to your mind is it is an aldohexose. So hexose, 6 carbons you have to draw. Aldehyde, first carbon should be put with that functional group. Then third carbon orientation of OH and H you should be careful with. Or else you fill up with H and OH, you will get the structure of glucose. Okay. Now that is made in the ring structure because the first carbon reacts with the fifth carbon and the oxygen ultimately comes in that ring by the removal of water molecule. Water molecule is removed. Right. And then how this is actually put or written is actually shown here. So here also, here I have shown the structure of glucose for you, ring structure of glucose. So actually the structure that I have shown you is a structure of alpha glucose. Now what is this? Alpha glucose. Or there is also a glucose called as beta glucose. Now then what is the difference between alpha glucose and beta glucose? It's not so complicated. It's very simple. Just look at the orientation of H and OH towards this first carbon. Towards the first carbon. If in this first carbon H is on the top, like this, H is on the top and OH down, it is alpha glucose. So what I have drawn here is structure of alpha glucose because H is on the top and OH down. Then how will I show the structure of beta glucose? Beta glucose, very simple. Just invert the orientation of H and OH. Rest of the things are the same. I have drawn 5 corners. Okay, one corner is occupied by oxygen. So I am going to draw the structure of beta glucose. Only thing is orientation is different. If I put here OHH, this becomes a beta glucose. So rest of the positions, it is HOH. Third position, of course, because it is glucose, it will be OHH. Then here also HOH. Here CH2OH. So this is structure of beta glucose and that was the structure of alpha glucose. Now why I told you the structure of alpha glucose and beta glucose is because for you to understand how these sugar molecules are linked to form a polysaccharide. Okay, so far we have completed with the structure of monosaccharide, the simplest monosaccharide, that is glucose. Okay, now let us see how two glucose units are linked. So I think glucose structure is clear to you. Now let us see how these glucose units are linked. Okay, how these glucose units are linked. So for that, again I am going to draw the structure of glucose. Oh, I have written. See, I am drawing the structure many times so that you will feel it simpler to draw the structure. HOH, HOH. Third carbon I should be careful. It is OHH. Okay. here it is HOH, and here CH2OH and H. So one glucose I have written. Now I am going to link it with the next glucose. So I have to draw the structure of the one more glucose molecule I have to draw. I am drawing it. Okay. Both I am making it as alpha glucose. Okay. So in both cases, first carbon orientation is HOH. I am taking the case of alpha glucose. Now comes the crucial part. I am going to link. I am going to link this first glucose with the second glucose. How? First carbon of this glucose, and which carbon is this? Number it. 1, 2, 3, fourth carbon. Fourth carbon of the next glucose, I am making them engage in a linkage. So in that linkage, water molecule is getting removed. Okay, H2O. H2O is getting removed. What is left? One oxygen is left. Right? Water molecule is getting removed and this one oxygen is left. So that one oxygen, I am making it in this bond. Okay? Water molecule got removed. Water molecule got removed here. And the extra oxygen that was left here, that is there in this bond. See? Now, first glucose unit and the second glucose unit are engaged in a bond. Now, what is the name of this bond? This is called as a glycosidic. This is called as a glycosidic bond. Glycosidic bond. Specifically speaking, you can call this as an O-glycosidic bond because in the linkage oxygen is there. And it is called as glycosidic bond because it is between two sugar units. Not only between glucose, between any two sugar units, you call it as a glycosidic bond. Likewise, if I put one more glucose unit here, I can link them with another glycosidic bond. So, like this, if I keep on linking many sugar units, glucose units, what I am going to get? I am going to get a polysaccharide. I am going to get a polysaccharide. Okay. Here, only two glucose units are linked. So, if only two monosaccharides are linked, only if two monosaccharides are linked, I call that as a disaccharide. So what I have just now shown you is actually a disaccharide because here see two glucose units are linked by this glycosidic bond. So I can call this as a disaccharide, and this is this disaccharide that I have shown you is maltose. Maltose. Here alpha glucose is linked with another alpha glucose and it is engaged in what kind of bonding? Alpha 1,4 linkage, isn't it? What do you mean by this 1,4 linkage? First carbon is linked to the fourth carbon. So it's very simple. Alpha form of glucose is it, and the first carbon is linked to the fourth carbon. Again, this is the first carbon of this particular sugar that will be linked to the fourth carbon of the next one. So if you add more than two glucose units, it is not maltose, it will become some other molecule. Maltose is a disaccharide. Disaccharide means it is made up of only two monosaccharide units. So what is shown here is actually structure of a disaccharide, example maltose. Now if 3 to 20 monosaccharides are added like this. Okay, if 3 to 20 monosaccharides are added one after the other and engaged in glycosidic bond, then I call that kind of molecule as a oligosaccharide. If it is just two monosaccharides linked, it is disaccharide. If it is 3 to 20 monosaccharides linked, it is called as a oligosaccharide. If 20 plus monosaccharides, that means more than 20 monosaccharides are linked, then I call this by the name polysaccharide. 20 plus monosaccharides are linked. I call that as by the name polysaccharide. So disaccharide, oligosaccharide and polysaccharide. Okay. Sometimes, no children, see in this case, in this maltose, the two units linked are glucose. They are same. Okay. In the case of polysaccharide, just give me an example of a polysaccharide. You know, cellulose is a polysaccharide. Starch is another polysaccharide. Glycogen is another polysaccharide. So, cellulose, starch, glycogen, all these are examples of polysaccharides. And all these polysaccharides, the repeating unit is glucose only. That's why I made it a point to explain to you the structure of glucose and how they are engaged in linkage. But sometimes here I have drawn alpha. In cellulose and in starch and all, there is beta linkage also. Alpha 1,6 linkage is there. Alpha 1,4 is there. Like this, different linkages are there. So it all depends upon where this glycosidic bond is actually attached. Okay, so polysaccharides here, like cellulose, starch and glycogen, is made up of just one kind of monosaccharide, that is glucose. So if a polysaccharide is made up of only one kind of monosaccharide, you call that as a homopolysaccharide. Okay, but there are polysaccharides which are made up of more than one type of monosaccharide. You call them by the name heteropolysaccharide. So depending upon if it is made up of same type of monosaccharide or different type of monosaccharide, you have two types of polysaccharides. They are called as homo if it is made up of same type of monosaccharides, and heteropolysaccharides if they are made up of different types of monosaccharides. So I think today's session was totally devoted to you to make you understand the basics of the polysaccharide, monosaccharide, structure of that important molecule, glucose, okay, glucose, and then how this bonding is formed, what is that maltose, what is alpha, beta, what is that linkage, okay. I am telling this again and again for you to recollect as I say, okay. And then disaccharide, oligosaccharide, polysaccharide, and last we dealt with what is a homopolysaccharide and a heteropolysaccharide, okay. In the coming sessions also, I'll just take you to the other biomolecule or the other macromolecule called as the polypeptide. That also will be there in the coming sessions. So subscribe the channel and keep watching, keep supporting. Thank you.